I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mark Hartley. I'm an account executive with BST Global. I work here in North America and help accounts both in the U.S. and in Canada. We're very excited to have you all join us today, and this is our second event in our educational webinar series. For this session, we're going to focus on earned value management, and specifically how architecture and engineering consultancies can leverage this technique to mitigate adverse project variances and better assess overall performance. Before I turn things over to our speaker, I'd like to share a little bit about his background. John Mathew is BST Global's Product Director for Project and Resource Management. He's also a member of the BST Global Executive Management Team. John and his team manage a whole portfolio of business applications that facilitate sales, project, and operational management. John first joined BST back in 2001, and prior to that, John worked for Deloitte Consulting from 1997 to 2000, focusing on business and technology needs of large construction projects. He also spent time in Silicon Valley designing knowledge management solutions for architecture and engineering firms. John holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from North Carolina State University, go back, and a master's degree in architectural engineering from Pennsylvania State University. He is also a PMI-certified project management professional and a Microsoft certified professional. Now, I'd like to turn it over and welcome John Mathew.
Thanks for the introduction, and thanks to all of you attending this webinar for joining in. One of the great things about my job here at BST is that I get to work with firms like yours, which really are such impressive stewards of the built environment all around us. From the buildings we work, live, and play in, to the bridges and roads that connect us, and the plants and refineries that provide us with essential resources, the projects that you all deliver tangibly improve the world in so many ways. Against the backdrop of these impressive outcomes, though, is a reality you all are all too familiar with. Delivering these projects is tough work. On top of the complex architectural and engineering challenges that you're dealing with, managing expectations with your clients can require providing updates like we're on schedule, but perhaps it looks like we're going to exceed our budget, or we're running a bit behind, but we're going to come in under budget. The fact of the matter is that design consultancies can find special meaning in Ben Franklin's proverbial words, time is money. You make money directly from the time you spend solving problems. Your contracts often include time and money expectations against a defined scope. And the health of your projects has both schedule and monetary aspects to it. All told, the successful delivery of professional services involves navigating the intersection of project schedules and project finances. But it can be a struggle for many design consultancies to establish the visibility necessary to really assess project health and drive project performance. All too often, project complexity, disparate systems, disconnected processes, or some unfortunate combination of all of these factors can cloud a project manager's ability to clearly view the status of a project and objectively answer that central question, is the project on track? This challenge is further exemplified in a recent industry study, which found that about 2/3 of design consultancies experience negative revenue variances on their projects. These consultancies are struggling with projects that are over budget, and in many cases I hear about, these variances are identified when it's really too late to do anything about them. The same study also highlighted another critical issue related to negative revenue variances and associated revenue shortfalls. And that's the fact that on many design projects, these revenue shortfalls get magnified by the industry's typically thin margins to become even more significant profit shortfalls. So there's a clear business imperative to get in front of these project revenue variances. First of all, be more aware of where projects currently stand, and then also where they're heading. Armed with this kind of visibility, a design consultancy is in a much better position to take corrective action and ultimately reduce project variances. Enter Earned Value Management, or simply EVM. EVM is a methodology that provides direction at the intersection of time and money. And it offers an objective way to assess project health and drive project performance. For the balance of this webinar, I'd like to give you a brief history of earned value management, explain the core concepts of EVM, and give you a roadmap for implementing EVM in your organization. First developed by the United States Department of Defense back in the 1960s, EVM is a technique for objectively measuring project performance from both financial and scheduling perspectives. Built on top of the project management triangle shown here, which is also known as the triple constraint, EVM leverages measurements of scope, of time, and cost to assess progress and forecast where a project is headed. Earned value management helps ensure that a project is completed on time, within budget, and according to specifications. More specifically, project managers and project accountants can use EVM to quantify and measure project performance, to provide a warning system for departure from a baseline, to minimize risks associated with cost and schedule deviations, and forecast the financial and schedule outcomes that a project is headed towards. Since its development and introduction back in the 60s, earned value management has been used on thousands of defense contracts and is now employed across industries around the world to track and steer projects. Notably, the construction industry has been a relatively early private industry adopter, with more recent adoption in the IT and manufacturing sectors. A number of design consultancies have also incorporated earned value management into their project management methodology to get clearer, timelier insight into project status. But interestingly, for many architecture and engineering firms, earned value management still represents unexplored territory. One of the barriers to adopting earned value management that some design consultancies face stems from a sense that EVM may be too complicated or otherwise not a good fit. Oftentimes I find this is due to a misconception of what EVM is all about and what it's built upon. So let's take a closer look at EVM's foundation and how it's actually very well aligned with how you deliver projects and how you look to monitor and manage project health. At its core, earned value management is built on three metrics: planned value, earned value, and actual cost. Think of these metrics in terms of your project budget and schedule. Planned value represents how you expect to earn your project budget over the duration of the project. Earned value represents what you actually earn as the project progresses. Actual cost represents what you spend to do project work throughout the project. I'm guessing these terms are pretty straightforward to you, but I think they can be made even more meaningful for a professional services firm. First, let's look at planned value. Planned value provides the baseline for tracking project performance in EVM. It represents the value a project is expected to deliver over its duration. In the context of consulting projects, planned value represents the revenue a project is expected to earn through completion, adding up to the overall project fee or budget. In other words, planned value is planned revenue. Planned revenue may be expressed as an overall figure for an entire budget or entire project, or it can be divided across a project's work breakdown structure. Additionally, planned revenue can be spread across time periods, for example, weeks or months, to represent the timing of when a project is expected to earn revenue based on anticipated completion of project deliverables. The second metric of earned value management is earned value. For design consultancies, this is more aptly termed earned revenue, as the metric represents the revenue a project earns as work is performed and milestones are achieved. There are multiple ways to earn revenue on a project. Revenue may be earned when the project team charges hours or expenses to the project. Hours charged on a timesheet may be converted into revenue via contracted labor multipliers or bill rate schedules. Expense charges, on the other hand, like travel, printing, or sub-consultant expenses, these may be converted into revenue via contracted expense multipliers or unit pricing schedules. Revenue may also be earned as project managers assess percent complete or estimate at completion across the project work breakdown structure. These assessments are often done on a monthly basis and often stem from progress to date and how much work remains. Regardless of how it's calculated, earned revenue is often governed by planned revenue, which in turn is tied to a project's contract. For instance, if the contract dictates an overall lump sum or fixed fee amount, earned revenue can't exceed this amount. A similar limit applies for projects that have cost plus, that is time and materials contracts, up to a predetermined maximum amount. I'll come back to calculating earned revenue later in the presentation. So at this juncture, let's move on to translating actual cost into a more meaningful term. EVM's third core metric, actual cost, equates to the market or retail cost a project incurs as work is performed. This metric provides consultancies with a way to compare how much effort has been expended on a project in relation to the planned revenue and earned revenue on the project. As such, in a professional services context, this metric is better termed actual effort. In many ways, actual effort accrues on a project similar to the way earned revenue accrues. Actual effort is the result of labor or expense charges being posted to a project, with these charges being converted into actual effort via contracted labor and expense pricing terms. However, there are two significant differences between actual effort and earned revenue. First, actual effort can't be calculated or adjusted by percent complete assessments. Rather, actual effort is purely a function of the labor or expense charges posted to the project. Second, actual effort isn't bound by planned revenue. As your team continues to work on a project, actual effort will continue to accrue, even if it exceeds planned revenue. Another way to understand actual effort comes from its relationship to direct cost. While direct cost represents the cost to a consultancy for services delivered, actual effort represents the market value of services delivered. And while some consultancies may incorporate direct cost into their project management methodology to measure project multipliers or other margin-based metrics, know that earned value management doesn't rely on direct cost for any of its calculations. Now that we've examined the foundation of EVM and translated EVM's core metrics into even more meaningful terms for a design consultancy, I'd like to focus on some practical steps for implementing earned value management in a firm like yours. Specifically, I've got 5 keys for implementing EVM. At a high level, these 5 keys include a few steps focused on establishing and maintaining project work breakdown structures, project schedules, and project baselines. Then a couple steps focused on tracking and managing actual effort and earned revenue. Let's unpack each of these steps one by one, starting with establishing work breakdown structure standards. A key component to earned value management is establishing a work breakdown structure, or WBS, for every project. Consider establishing WBS standards for the different types of projects you deliver, aligning with project size, scope, and complexity. For example, you may have different standards for projects that fall into large, medium, and small categories, and maybe even more specific standards based on the different markets you serve. Regardless of how many different types of work breakdown structures you decide to leverage across your project portfolio, remember this: to best support earned value management, a project's work breakdown structure should be established down to the level that planned revenue, earned revenue, and actual effort will be tracked on that project. Second, to utilize earned value management to track schedule performance, you need to establish and maintain project schedules. These schedules should reflect the structure and sequencing of the project work breakdown structure and how resources will be utilized across the work breakdown structure to deliver the project. These resources may include specific employees or more generic labor resource classes, as well as sub-consultants or expense resource classes. And how the resources will be utilized typically entails hours of work for labor resources and cost or other units of work for expense resources. Additionally, these schedules should be divided into time periods. That is, the weeks, months, or sometimes even days that are granular enough for a project's duration. Third, after establishing the project work breakdown structure and resource plan, you can determine planned revenue for the project. An integrated project management and accounting system with the right combination of project-centric capabilities can help with this step. To support earned value management, a system should capture the project labor and expense pricing terms and leverage these terms along with the project resource plan to calculate planned revenue. But even if you don't leverage a project resource plan to calculate planned revenue, at a minimum, planned revenue should be established for each WBS element in order to utilize EVM to track project financial performance across the entire work breakdown structure. If tracking project schedule performance is also an objective, then planned revenue should also be forecasted across the same time periods by which the project schedule is established. Fourthly, as project execution begins, track actual effort as labor and expense charges are posted to the project work breakdown structure. Here too, a project-based business system can assist if it tracks actual effort in conjunction with timesheets, expense reports, and other project charges. By doing so, a system can provide project managers and other project stakeholders with real-time visibility into the fully marked up, or again, retail value of work being charged to the project. And as we examine the fifth step for implementing earned value management, we'll see how this visibility into actual effort is a valuable input into managing earned revenue. By performing the four previous steps, you're now in a position to manage earned revenue. I'll talk in a bit about how to calculate and update earned revenue, but would like to focus first on some of the factors that go into examining the current earned revenue position as an input into adjusting it. Managing earned revenue should be rooted in an analysis of a project's financial and schedule health. Within these two areas, there are specific metrics that help determine how the project is doing, what the updated earned revenue position should be, and just as importantly, if corrective action is necessary to get a project back on track. To gain schedule insight, here's some helpful metrics that leverage planned revenue and earned revenue. First up is schedule variance. Schedule variance offers an assessment of whether the project is currently ahead or behind schedule. This is done by measuring the difference in time between the current earned revenue position and when planned revenue is targeted to be at the same position. When current earned revenue is earlier than its corresponding planned revenue date, the project is ahead of schedule. That is, you're earning revenue faster than planned. But when earned revenue lags planned revenue, the project is behind schedule. In this scenario, you're earning revenue slower than planned. A second metric, related metric, is schedule performance index. This is the ratio of current earned revenue to current planned revenue. This metric provides a normalized assessment of whether a project is ahead of schedule or behind schedule. That is, if the ratio is greater than 1, the project is ahead of schedule. But if the ratio is less than 1, the project is behind schedule. A couple more metrics. Planned duration is simply the number of days, weeks, or months a project is expected to span, while duration at completion provides a projection of how long the project is currently targeted to go, based on dividing the planned duration by the scheduled performance index we talked about just previous. And then a fifth schedule metric, schedule variance at completion. This is a projection of whether the project will complete ahead or behind schedule by measuring the difference between duration at completion and planned duration. As I look at all of these metrics, they're all useful, but I particularly like the scheduled performance index. Again, it's a ratio of current earned revenue to current planned revenue. What's nice about it is that since it's a ratio, It's a normalized means of looking across a diverse portfolio of projects that have differing durations. Using Scheduled Performance Index, this ensures that schedule variances on shorter projects are not lost amongst the scheduled performance on longer projects. So let's look at the other facet of earned value management, switching to a financial perspective. Here's some helpful metrics that leverage earned revenue and actual effort. First is budget variance. This is the difference between earned revenue and actual effort on a project at a point in time. This provides insight into whether a project is under budget or over budget by comparing how much money has been spent to how much revenue has been earned. Another way to measure budget variance is by the Effort Performance Index. This is a ratio of earned revenue to actual effort, and this measures how efficiently a project is earning revenue compared to expenditure. In this case, an index less than 1 indicates an over-budget condition. Third is effort at completion. This provides a projection of how much money will be spent at project completion by dividing planned revenue at completion by the Effort Performance Index. And fourth is budget variance at completion, which is the difference between planned revenue at completion and effort at completion. I particularly like this last metric, as it predicts where a project will end up in comparison to its overall budget, and provides early insight into project revenue variances, regardless of whether or not the project has a defined schedule. Against the backdrop of all of these metrics that enable schedule and financial analysis of a project, it's important to pick the ones that are most meaningful to your firm and can be measured based on your firm's current processes and systems. As we've discussed, examining these metrics as projects progress provides insight into the health and trajectory of a project. It also highlights when it might be time to adjust the current earned revenue position on a project. There are a few different approaches for calculating earned revenue. First is an approach that equates earned revenue to actual effort. This is an appropriate approach to use when the effort expended on the project doesn't exceed budget and the project's on track. Second, you can leverage an assessment of current percent complete across a project's work breakdown structure, where the percent complete is then applied to the planned revenue at completion of each WBS element to establish an updated earned revenue position for the project overall. A third approach is to leverage actual effort and projected effort at completion across a project's work breakdown structure, and use these values to calculate percent complete across the work breakdown structure by dividing actual effort into projected effort at completion. And just like the second approach, by applying these calculated percent completes to planned revenue at completion, an updated earned revenue position can be calculated. There can be situations where you may want to employ a mix of the three approaches that I just talked about across your project portfolio, or perhaps pick just one, depending on the mix of project contracts or fee types in your portfolio. Regardless of which of these three approaches you employ, an EVM-enabled business system can come in very handy if it tracks actual effort, allows capture of physical percent complete or projected effort at completion on projects, and calculates earned revenue based on any of the three approaches we've reviewed. As I've examined these 5 keys to implementing earned value management, I hope you've picked up some actionable next steps on how you can make EVM a reality in your firm. But I also realize that there are firms out there that, even armed with these best practices, can still struggle to enjoy improved project delivery in relation to EVM. These firms face change management challenges that go deeper than what the more practical steps we just examined can address. So to those of you facing change management challenges when it comes to earned value management, I've got some guidance on what you can do. Earlier in this presentation, I talked about the 65% of the industry that experiences negative revenue variances. So what about the other 35%? What are these firms doing that allows them to deliver projects that are on budget or even under budget? From my vantage point, there are some common characteristics of firms that achieve this kind of success while overcoming their own change management challenges along the way. A central characteristic I see in successful firms is a culture of discipline. Simply put, there's a commitment to establishing a shared path forward and then driving the organization along this path. Moreover, I see three common markers along this path to successful change management, including alignment, integration, and accountability. Let's take a tour of each one and relate them to adopting earned value management. Earlier, I translated EVM's three core metrics into terms more relevant to design projects. This translation is certainly helpful from an educational perspective, but it's also critical from a change management perspective. In order to leverage EVM effectively, a design consultancy must align EVM's three core metrics with how their projects are contracted and delivered. With this understanding, a firm can then start to understand how EVM can add value to project delivery, and also identify additional metrics and thresholds to improve project insight and establish early warning indicators of project issues. Different consultancies have different needs, including which combination of EVM's financial and schedule metrics are useful. As you identify the mix of metrics for your firm, consider goals and variance thresholds for each selected metric. For example, if effort performance index is important, define the upper and lower limits that dictate whether a project needs further focus and attention. By defining these thresholds, you start to establish how earned value management will fit into your firm's project management methodology, and also help bring along those folks in your firm who might need some further convincing. Speaking of methodology, this is a good segue to our next stop. As I reviewed keys to successfully implementing earned value management on earlier slides in this presentation, I hope you gained an appreciation of how the thoughtful use of process and technology can help with the adoption of earned value management. This is an important point because EVM as simply a set of concepts won't do anything to help reduce project variances. Rather, earned value management must be operationalized. It must be acted upon in order to have any benefit. The best way to make earned value management real is to look at how it can be woven into your existing project delivery processes and systems. There will certainly be some situations in which a particular process or system might need to be replaced. But if there's resistance to change, I suggest initially looking for ways to incrementally change existing processes and systems and proving out a selected benefit of EVM. I outlined 4 overall benefits of earned value management at the beginning of this presentation. But if you're having change management issues, consider doing an EVM pilot that focuses on a subset of these benefits. For example, better tracking of project financial performance and earlier insight into budget variances. Once you prove some benefits, you can often get more buy-in to continue to integrate EVM throughout your project delivery organization and go after additional benefits. Talking about broader and deeper organizational integration leads us to our next stop, and that's accountability. At the end of the day, I believe earned value management goes to the heart of how design consultancies deliver projects. Therefore, in order to truly harness earned value management and enjoy its benefits, it's important that EVM is leveraged across all levels of the organization to review and drive project performance. For example, it doesn't do much good to only implement EVM within your project management population. Certainly you may start there. But without including your project accounting team, as well as operational and executive leadership, you'll have different constituents viewing and discussing project status in fundamentally different ways. And we know this doesn't lead to better visibility. This leads to confusion. The better way is to understand that earned value management can improve the lives of project managers, project accountants, and senior leadership in your firm, and approach it accordingly. As you look at incorporating EVM into project delivery, Consider how your different project delivery stakeholders are measured and held accountable, and think through how this accountability should be evolved to leverage earned value management throughout the organization. Well, this concludes my prepared presentation. I appreciate you all taking the ride with me. I know we've covered a fair amount of ground, including the applicability of earned value management to design consultancies and how to implement EVM in your firm. I hope you've gained a better understanding of EVM along the way and picked up some actionable steps towards better project performance and reduced project variances in your firm.
Thanks, John. That was terrific. I'd like to thank everyone for joining our Earned Value Management webinar today. And also, John, thank you for sharing the valuable insights on EVM best practices. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, certainly plug into John's blog series on EVM on the BST Global Ideas blog. You can review these articles and more at bstglobal.com/ideas.